The ministers and the ambassadors, can you all please come here for the group photo?
Welcome back to the I-24 News studios for the special edition of German Chancellor Angela Merkel's visit to Israel. I'm here with German journalists Lissy Kaufman and Thori Schroeder. And Lissy, I want to start with you. One of the major topics of the joint press conference we just heard are boycotts and settlements. And we heard Chancellor Merkel say that Germany does not agree with these and that it is not an option for peace.
Exactly. This is one of the major topics that is actually running through all the discussions for a couple of years now. Once and again, Chancellor Merkel said, we agree to disagree. Germany said again and again, we are against the building of new settlements. And Netanyahu continues doing it, or the Israeli government continues doing it. And this is a major issue.
And this is something that we've heard responses not only from Germany, the entire European Union and the United States, and saying that it's hurting the peace process.
Exactly. We see this as the main obstacle. Like the German government sees it as the main obstacle to peace, while Israel again and again says it is not. There's some voices even saying we would stop doing it. But first of all, the Palestinians need to state that they accept an Israeli state, the state of Israel, as a Jewish state, and they don't. And this needs to be the first step. So.
And the use of the word boycott, it's still a very, very sensitive word around Germany.
Yeah, it evokes all the pictures of the 1930s when there were pictures of SA men standing in front of Jewish shops in Berlin and other German cities saying, kauft nicht bei Juden. So this is a term that will never be used by any German politician. I think that's common ground by all parties, by the two parties that are members of this coalition and who are visiting, but also of the other ones who are members of the parliament. Angela Merkel stressed that point, but she also said that for the European labeling rules, she cannot interfere, and that is a different
and
issue.
This is a topic that we're not sure if they will converse about during this visit, because they may leave it out for the greater good of talking about the peace process and Iran.
But very interesting, I feel, is that it is perceived very different in Israel and in Europe, or specifically in Germany. While here in Israel, it is seen as a topic that concerns the complete Jewish state and the boycott of the Jewish state. Many in Europe say it is not a boycott of all of Israel. It is a boycott of products from the settlements. And so they define it very, very differently.
And I want to talk about the relationship between the two. We heard Chancellor Merkel say that we're reaching 50 years of diplomatic relations, but are these relations still sensitive going back to the 1940s and the Holocaust?
I believe they will remain sensitive forever, because this was a unique crime and an atrocity that we probably will never have in Europe again. So there will never be a normal relationship between Israel and Germany. Another question is the terms that Bibi and Merkel are on. He keeps showing a strong relation, a good relation with her, calling her Angela all the time, and
but is that a
being very
mask
cheerful.
for something different behind closed doors?
Well, she seemed a lot more serious in this press conference that we've just seen than him, and I think it's a way of masking it also. And he started off his talk, his statement, by stressing the long way that they've come, but in the end he dedicated the biggest portion to Iran and to issues that they disagree on. So we see by that
you see a split between the two, and there have been rumors about shouting matches over the phone and relationships going downhill since Netanyahu took office 5 years ago. How should we look at this relationship going forward? Is there a way of fixing this, or is there still just special treatment towards Israel because of this, quote, sensitive relationship?
I personally think that time will show, especially if we watch if something's going to happen with the peace agreements. This might actually change something. I mean, the topic of the settlement, as we said before, is such a huge topic. It will still be there if nothing changes. So they won't, ease up on that. Bibi Benjamin Netanyahu stands very firm on that, and so does Merkel. So I think time will show what will be decided.
All right, thank you very much. And we are going to Jerusalem to our I-24 News diplomatic correspondent, Tal Shalev, who just left the press conference. Tal, what should we expect going forward after this press conference hearing from both sides?
Well, we heard what both leaders had to say. It is clear that this venue and this G2G, government-to-government meeting is all about the celebrations. Neither one of the leaders wanted to elaborate on the differences between them. They did mention the differences both on the settlement issue and both on the Iranian enrichment program. But in any case, they did not want to make this the point of reference for this visit. And the point of reference for this visit is a celebration of the special relationship between Israel and Germany. They are expected to unveil the logo of the next year 50th anniversary celebrations that will be launched today in Jerusalem by Merkel and Netanyahu. After this meeting, most of the German cabinet ministers will be driving to the Israeli airport and flying back to Berlin, but the German Chancellor has just a few more hours. She'll be meeting with the opposition leader, Yitzhak Buji Herzog, here in Jerusalem, and later on she has the highlight of the day. She is expected to receive a very special presidential award from the Israeli president, Shimon Peres, who has decided to give Merkel the highest honor of distinction, the Presidential Medal of Honor, which is to commemorate and to mark her contribution to Israel's security and her standing by Israel over the years. Peres wants Merkel to leave this visit on a positive note, and if everything's go by its way, that's the way it'll be.
And Tal, you said this is more of a celebration visit, but we can't ignore the politics behind it. We know Merkel is here to back up U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry about the peace process. How much influence can she have on this ongoing process? We apologize for some technical difficulties. And I want to ask you the same question. How much influence can Merkel actually have on the peace process? And, she said she's here to back up Secretary John Kerry, who really took the initiative. But can she influence Netanyahu or the Palestinians?
It seems to be a very tough issue because, as I just said before, in the settlement issue, Benjamin Netanyahu stands really firm. So, of course, Angela Merkel cannot come and say, listen, change this, and then Benjamin Netanyahu will say, of course we will. We didn't think about it. So it is a tough task. And as we see, even Kerry has a hard time doing it, and the U.S. is really powerful. The only thing that Germany, I think, can do is repeat again and again what they think would help to promote the peace process, to promote peace.
And will Germany stand by Israel if, I don't want to say this falls through, but something happens and the European Union does decide to boycott? What kind of power does Germany have if something like that does come along?
I'm actually sure that Angela Merkel and her cabinet would do anything to step in the way if another government or the European Union would want to decide on something like that. When she came here in 2008, she said that the security of the State of Israel is part of the German state reason, and I think that exemplifies what importance it plays in her policy. A boycott will never be tolerated by Germany. I think they will firmly step up.
And I want to talk, we talked about Angela Merkel's agenda coming here to back up U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, but Netanyahu also had his agendas, and he spoke a lot about Iran and talking to Chancellor Merkel about Iran. Lizzie, does he have any power? Is Germany his, I don't want to say last hope, but best chances of getting his opinion across?
Well, this is a topic he mentions to basically everyone that has power in the agreements or in the discussions with Iran. It's not only Germany, but as Germany is such a special partner of Israel, as they share such a unique friendship, I feel it is some sort of not his last chance, but as you said, a very good option for him to stress again his point of view, and it's really different from the one that Merkel actually has.
And we've heard them say. He's saying it should be a 0% chance for Tehran to enrich uranium, and she does not stand by that. And Tora, I want to come to you. What is the image of Israel, not for Merkel and her cabinet, her ministers, but for people in Germany?
The people I meet, they're intrigued by Israel. Many that don't know the Middle East too well, they say, when I say I'm going to Israel, they say, oh, isn't it dangerous still? So they associate it always with the conflict still. And so there's not so much broad knowledge about Israel being the modern state that it is. Apart from that, once people have been here, they change their opinion every time because they have a good time. And like your correspondent said before, we should also stress that these two countries have come such a long way in 50 years. 50 years, and now Germany has become the strongest ally of Israel. This is unique and something that shouldn't be blocked by the problems that we have.
And is there any general knowledge in the population about these diplomatic issues or opinions about it?
I recently did a story, but in Israel, what people actually know, and I feel it is just, you know, you've heard about things, but I don't think it really concerns the German-Israel relations as much as it concerns voices from abroad. Like the boycott issues, many Israelis can't understand why the settlement issue is such a big issue. So I don't think that they really deal with or think about German-Israeli relations as much as they think about the voices from abroad. That's the feeling I get here in this country.
There have been media discussions about Israel actually being, I think there was a questionnaire once about Israel being a bigger threat to world security than Iran. That was one questionnaire in Germany a couple of years ago. And then there was a discussion about what Günter Grass said, a Nobel Prize laureate from Germany. He also was going in that direction. And then we had a publicist called Jakob Augstein, who was accusing Israel of certain things in the occupation. And so there's a strong sentiment that Israel is causing this, and that's a reason for concern.
And we're going back now to Jerusalem, to Tal Shalev. Tal, the major point of today was this press conference, but we also had a couple of agreements signed this morning between the two countries.
Well, yes, the tipping point is the settlement issue, but before the joint press conference, there was a very big ceremonial meeting, a G2G meeting, government-to-government meeting, in which a series of bilateral agreements were signed. Some of them are very interesting and very substantial, such as signing of an agreement of cooperation on visa services, consular services for Israeli citizens in countries where Israel does not have any diplomatic representation. So Germany has now taken on itself to take care of these issues. Also, there's going to be a visa exchange agreement in which Israeli youth and German youth can go to bilateral exchange visits and have special conditions for working permits and tourism permits and business permits. And besides that, there is a large, wide range of agreements in the defense, economy, foreign affairs, education, research, science, and innovation. This is definitely one of the focuses of this meeting, the wide bilateral cooperation, which probably does not come into the spotlights when usually we talk about the settlement issue. That is usually the focus of the talks of the Israeli-Germany relationship in recent years. But in fact, this visit is dictated by a very strong relationship, and you feel a very strong will from both sides, both in the Israeli Foreign Ministry and in the German Foreign Ministry, to make sure that this visit is a demonstration of a very good friendship and not only about the division on the settlement issue.
Tal Shalev, thank you very much. And I want to talk to you guys, we touched about this a little bit earlier, the personal relationship between Netanyahu and Merkel and the screaming matches that are rumored over the phone. How much is their personal relationship affecting the overall relationship between the two countries?
I mean, it's hard to really see what is going on behind closed doors, but there is rumors that it's actually the relationship between Bibi Netanyahu and Angela Merkel is not as maybe warm and like a kind of a friendship as it used to be with Ehud Olmert and Angela Merkel.
It was a relationship with Ehud Olmert in 2007 that they started these yearly cabinet meetings between the two. And she hasn't been here in 3 years. Can that be attributed to this relationship with Netanyahu?
Maybe it can be, yeah. I mean, when she came here the first time, 2008, giving the speech in the Knesset in German as the first German politician speaking in German, which was a huge thing, she also said back then that her goal is to come once a year. But this hasn't been true since Benjamin Netanyahu took over the prime ministership. So it might actually be that it is related to that.
And same question for you, Tor. What should we attribute this?
I think it was obvious in the press conference that Bibi was stressing that they still have a very good and functioning personal relationship. He was calling her Angela, my dear friend, I think, and she was rather cold in that respect. So yeah, you can see a division there. I think he's better able to foreshadow something that is not happening. I can't picture Angela Merkel screaming, by the way.
Can't picture, but there are rumors that it did get very heated between them two on the phone. And where should we look for this relationship going forward? We're reaching 50 years next year. Can they renew or strengthen these relationships as they're saying that they're doing this time around? Or is it going to continue downhill, as we saw in the last couple of years, while Netanyahu is still in office?
I don't think that it really can go down. We talked about it's a very special relationship that they have. It's a friendship that just won't end because two people maybe don't agree as much as before with when Olmert was still prime minister. So I think the special relationships will be there. And as you said also before, she stressed we won't boycott Israel. It might just stay a little bit tense and they agree to disagree.
And we spoke about it. We are actually going back to take a look at what Benjamin Netanyahu said during the press conference.
Chancellor Merkel, my dear friend Angela, it's a pleasure to welcome you and your delegation to Israel. We had a very enjoyable and productive dinner last night in which we covered a breadth of issues, maybe the most important issues that relate to Israel's security interests and our quest for peace, and I appreciate your understanding and your consideration. And I think your visit here, accompanied here by virtually all of your cabinet, is a demonstration of the strength and warmth of Israeli-German relations. It's deeply appreciated. And I deeply appreciate your personal friendship. On the Iranian issue, despite the soothing words of President Rouhani, we see that Iran has not changed its behavior at all. Iran continues to oppress its people inside Iran. They execute hundreds of innocent people in the city squares. They actually hang them from cranes. And Iran continues to be on the ground in Syria, propping up the Assad regime, financing its murderous activities, giving them arms, giving them weapons, giving them fighters and commanders. This is continuing every day. As we speak, it's happening right now. Iran continues to perpetrate terrorism directly or through its proxy Hezbollah in Europe and around the world. And Iran continues its relentless pursuit of nuclear weapons. They continue to do so while developing the means to deliver those weapons. They're developing long-range ICBMs. And I want to say they're not directed against us. They already have the missiles to reach us. Those ICBMs are intended for Europe. They're intended for you. They're intended for the United States.
Those were Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's comments from just a short while ago during the joint press conference. Lissy and Tori, I want to say thank you very much for joining us today and for your insight on both the strain and celebration of this 50 years of diplomatic relations. That's all for this special edition of Chancellor Angela Merkel's visit to Israel. You can join us at the top of the hour. We'll have all the latest news and headlines from around the world. Thank you very much for watching.